Hello and welcome to By the Book. I'm your host, Joe Hebert, and today we continue our course on truth, justice, and leadership, and we're now going to delve into a writing by Plutarch. So who is Plutarch? Plutarch was a Greek scholar and also a priest and a magistrate. He did a variety of things in his days, but he is best known for his writings of two categories. One is his lives of the famous Greeks and Romans. And he is a Greek at a time when the Roman Empire was ascendant in the world. So he's covering both Greek and Roman history and civilization. And he's also famous for writing what is often called the Moralia, a series of different essays for different occasions and purposes, but which are all dealing with ethical and moral issues. And we're going to be looking at one of those in this course. It's an essay called How to Tell a Flatterer from a Friend. And we'll see that generally speaking, Plutarch is what I would call a practical Platonist. He is steeped in Plato's writings and other similar writings. And he is thinking about the wisdom of Socrates, but he's especially thinking about how to apply it in practical affairs, whether it be in friendship and family, in the town or the city, in the empire. And you see this in both genres of his writing. When he's looking at the great men of history, the most famous, the most powerful, the most influential people, very similar to the topic that we saw in Machiavelli. And we also saw this come up in the Gorgias, certain people who are admired by Callicles, for example. And Socrates has a different view of some of these people and thinks they're not as great as people think they are. If you judge them according to true wisdom, they're really not so great. So this is one of the things that Plutarch is doing, is he's looking very meticulously at the deeds and the thinking behind the actions of these men. And he is trying to help us to evaluate. He's not highly moralistic in those stories, but he's trying to help us to evaluate what was true or not true, what was good or not good about their choices and their accomplishments. In the Moralia, though, he is being much more focused on these questions in the general sense. But if you read, we're only going to look at clips as usual from How to Tell a Flatterer from a Friend. But if you read it, you'll see that he's constantly dropping names of historical figures, legendary figures, figures from poetry, and all kinds of different stories. Very eclectic. He's sort of synthesizing a lot of different cultural elements. And he's trying to basically, I would say, philosophize in a way that just the average person of that time and culture could easily absorb it and see what the point is. Now, on the flip side of that, there's a challenge in looking at Plutarch, because if we're not steeped in the history and the legends and the poetry of the ancient world, then every time we come to one of these examples, we could have to really stop and figure out who are these people and why is it important. And for example, what might he be implying with his examples that is not always explicitly stated. We're not going to try to do anything that in depth in this course, as we just dip into Plutarch a little bit. We're just going to look at some of the main points that he's making, and we're going to see how he's taking ideas that we especially saw in Plato's Gorgias about the just life and the good life, and how it's rooted in the pursuit of truth and the understanding of the order of things. And as Socrates says there, doing this makes us a friend to ourselves and a friend to others who are pursuing truth, and a friend to the gods. And that's really going to be Plutarch's focus in this from a very practical point of view. How do we cultivate friendship with ourselves and with other good people and with the gods? But he's going to focus especially on the problem of counterfeit friendship. So if true friendship is such a good thing, then false friendship is a great danger, because it's sort of luring us in with something which could be the greatest thing in our lives, but is actually not what it seems, and is therefore able to do the most damage to us in the long run. So being able to tell the difference between a flatterer and a friend, and a flatterer, as we'll see, is basically a manipulator, somebody who's pretending to have your interests at heart, but actually using you for some ulterior purposes. And anyway, we'll see how, because friendship is such a great thing, flattery as a false form of friendship is an extremely dangerous thing. And yet the smarter somebody is, the cleverer somebody is, as both Callicles and Machiavelli would tell us, you can fake these things. And so just as Machiavelli was trying to be practical by showing us how to fake these things and arguing that's what we should be doing. We should be flattering, we should be manipulating, we should be faking friendship because friendship isn't real. Plutarch, as a Platonist, he thinks, well, no, friendship is real, but yes, it can be faked, like Machiavelli says. Therefore, the practical point is, first of all, to be able to detect that flattery, detect that fakery, and see through it and defend ourselves from it. But then, as we'll see, the second half of the essay intriguingly focuses not on defending ourselves from others, but really it turns to the question of how to be a good friend. If a good friend is distinguished from a flatterer, we obviously, if we want to be good, we don't want to be flatterers, but as we're going to see, that also takes a certain kind of art. It also takes a certain kind of focus and discipline to make sure that we are being good friends even if we're trying to be good friends. So if we look at the introduction of the essay, it really encapsulates a lot of the argument that is going to unfold in the essay as a whole. He starts by saying Plato, he's going to quote Plato a lot among many other sources, but Plato definitely predominates. Plato says that all men pardon the man who acknowledges that he is excessively fond of himself. So I'll note right here that Plutarch is a very practical author, and he's challenging us, as a practical Platonist, he's challenging us to aim high in terms of virtue and perfection. And he's challenging us to aim for goals that are extremely difficult, that really we could spend our entire life using all of our energy trying to be a good person, trying to be virtuous. And we could always fall short. So it's a tremendously daunting thing that he is teaching in this and his other Moralia. But one of the things that he's going to teach in this essay, in which he clearly does himself, is that he tries to make this daunting task easier with a kind of gentleness and a kind of grace in the way that he approaches it. So he's going to basically say that this self-love, this bias towards ourselves, is really the root cause of all of our problems. It's the root cause of how we become susceptible to flattery and how we become susceptible to all the damage that flattery will do to us. So in a sense, he's saying it's all your fault. Like if you get deceived by people, it's all your fault because they're using your weakness against you. But he doesn't put it in such a harsh way. He starts by saying that Plato, who of course is the wise man, he says that it's excusable. We can pardon people for this love of themselves. But he says there is among many other defects this very grave one in self-love, that by it a man becomes incapable of being a just and impartial judge about himself. So it makes us partial towards ourselves. That, of course, weakens our ability to judge ourselves, and this opens us up to deception and manipulation. For love is blind in regard to the loved object, unless a person has learnt and accustomed himself to honor and pursue what is noble rather than his own selfish interests. So the last part there is saying this is the solution, which he's going to be exploring in the essay, which is that there's no quick and easy solution. It takes learning, it takes discipline. We have to study and practice and keep studying and practicing to know ourselves better, to judge ourselves better. And this is the only real solution to all of the problems that he's going to be unpacking in this essay. So it's not going to be easy, but he starts on this note of encouragement of saying, first of all, don't beat yourself up. This is the normal human condition. But it also defines the challenge that we're going to have to face and that he's going to help us to face. And wrapping this up here in the introduction, he says that it's this partiality towards ourselves that gives a great field for the flatterer in friendship, who finds a wonderful base of operations in our self-love, which makes each person his own first and greatest flatterer and easily admits a flatterer from without. So this is a really important formulation, that the most dangerous flatterer is ourselves. Just as the greatest benefit is to be our own friend. Other friends are a tremendous blessing, but in a certain sense, other people can't really help us if we're not helping ourselves. So we have to be a friend to ourselves if we can even benefit from the friendship of others. And on the flip side, other people can't exploit us and manipulate us unless we are a flatterer to ourselves, unless we're actually undermining our own sense of self-worth and self-knowledge in a way that makes that possible. So the next statement we're going to look at builds on that introductory warning, and it is focusing on the importance of self-knowledge, but it's also connecting this beyond our human relationships to the cosmic level and to our relationships to God or the gods. And if truth is a divine thing, and according to Plato, the beginning of all good things, both to the gods and men. So again, Plato's the authority here, and Plato's connecting gods and human beings through the concept of truth. Truth defines a good which is real for gods and for human beings. This is what is threatened by the flatterer. So the flatterer is likely to be an enemy to the gods. So the flatterer, of course, is our enemy, is somebody who, whether we know it or not, is hurting us, but is also an enemy to the gods, just as Socrates had said in the Gorgias. For he always, and especially to Apollo. Now, why is this? Apollo was the god who was associated with the Delphic oracle, where there was a motto inscribed saying, "Know thyself." So the flatterer sets himself against this famous saying, "Know thyself," implanting in everybody's mind self-deceit and ignorance of his own good or bad qualities. So this is of the essence of what flattery is. Flattery, again, manipulation, sort of using people. But how is this done? To the extent somebody knows himself and he knows his own good and bad qualities and he knows what's good for him, then it's difficult or impossible to use and abuse him in this kind of way. So if somebody's trying to use us, they have to sow confusion in our minds. They have to make us think that good is bad and bad is good. They have to make us think that we're strong where we're really weak and we're weak where we're really strong. They have to put us off guard in that way, because that's how they're going to get us to do things and go along with things contrary to our own interests. So the flatterer is defined here as being contrary to the gods in a way that is also simultaneously contrary to our best interests, because the gods here, Apollo is teaching us to know thyself, which is the root of our own good, for our own good to know ourselves. The flatterer is trying to prevent us from knowing ourselves, trying to confuse us about ourselves, thus making his good points, that is the victim's good points, defective and imperfect, and his bad points altogether incorrigible. So that final phrase there adds another little twist to this, which is that a friend is somebody who helps us to be our best self. That's why we ultimately need to be a friend to ourselves. We have to really be striving to be our best selves. But other people are friends to us when they help us to be our best selves. And that God is a friend to us when he encourages us, to be our best. But on the flip side, the flatterer, the enemy, is somebody who is bringing out the worst in us. Somebody who, again, in order to use us in some way, is trying to make us a worse person, encourage us to be a worse person, because in various ways that is how he's most able to exploit us. So what are we going to do about this? The essay is as mentioned, going to get into roughly the first half into a very detailed discussion of how we protect ourselves against flatterers. Then it's going to turn to how should we be a friend to others. So in this episode, we're just going to round off sort of the introductory aspects of the essay and look at the state of the problem, so to speak, the risk that is posed by the flatterer. Then we're going to get into how we defend ourselves from the flatterer, and then finally how to be a good friend to others and to ourselves. So the next point we're looking at here, he says, for a friend should be like money, tried before being required, not found faulty in our need. So if you think about the risk of counterfeit money, do you go to the store and try to buy some expensive item and then pull your money out and say, oh, let's check if it's real or not? Or when you're still at home, do you check to see if it's a counterfeit before you go, right? You don't want to wait until you're in a pinch to find out if this money is good or not. And it's the same thing with a friend. If you think somebody's your friend and then things go bad and this person abandons you, that just makes everything worse. So part of what he's going to be recommending in this essay, in fact, in a sense, kind of the framing thought in terms of the self-defense part, is that you need to be testing people all the time. And this applies to yourself too. We need to be testing ourselves. We need to be testing other people to find out who they really are, just as we need to understand ourselves and know who we really are. For we ought not to have our wits about us only when the mischief is done, but we ought to try and prevent the flatterer doing any harm to us. For otherwise we shall be in the same plight as people who test deadly poisons by first tasting them and kill or nearly kill themselves in the experiment. So he likes to use these interesting metaphors that just help us to understand at a very practical level what's going on. You wouldn't try to find out if something is poisonous by gulping it down and seeing if you survive or not. And you might do a little taste, just to see, but not to the point where it's potentially going to kill you. And similarly, you with a friend, you want to be treating somebody you're not sure if they're a true friend or not. You need to realize that this is potentially poisonous. That the stakes are high. So it is very important to test this person before it's too late and before you're potentially seriously harmed by a false friend. So the next point here is really important, because how do you tell the difference between a friend and a flatterer? As we're going to see, truth telling is one of the most crucial aspects. In fact, as we have seen, it is the essential thing. He says, a friend is helping you to know yourself and therefore to improve over time and become better based on a realistic self-appraisal. Whereas a flatterer is keeping you deceived about yourself, is always confusing your self-judgment in order to make you easier to manipulate. So the point is that a friend is going to be truthful, and the truth is not always pleasant. This is going to be one of the biggest themes in this essay, is that there's part of the reason we fall for flatterers is because the truth is often not convenient for us at any given moment in time. For me to hear about my flaws, or to hear that my strengths are not quite as much as what I thought they were or hoped they were, it's good, but not that good, It's never what I want to hear at the moment. But it may be what I need to hear. So a big part of friendship is going to be willingness to be truthful, even when that's unpleasant. But he warns us from the very beginning not to take this too far. We don't want to go from one extreme to another. This is a very important element of practical Platonism, because as we've seen, the classical notion of virtue is a golden mean. It's a mean between extremes. But one mistake that we make very frequently in practice is we go from one extreme to another. We try to correct one extreme by going to the other. So if flattery is too pleasant, we're just always saying what's pleasant and it's not really helping, and in fact it's leading people astray, then we might go to the opposite extreme of being severe and harsh and always criticizing, because that's how you can always help somebody get better, is by criticizing. Even though they did a good job, tell them, you can do better, because you're always challenging them. And so this is an important paragraph. He says, we must not, however, on that account, suspect all who praise as simple flatterers. So don't jump to the conclusion that anybody who's nice to you, anybody who is pleasant to be with, anybody who is praising you is a flatterer. For, he says, friendship requires praise as much as censure on the proper occasion. So friendship is a golden mean. It's not being critical or being supportive. It is whatever is required by the occasion, praise or censure, whatever is most appropriate. Later, he's actually going to go on and say that friendship really needs to have more praise than criticism, regardless of anything else, because it's just not humanly possible for most of us to take constant criticism, even if we deserve it in a sense. So if you really want to help somebody get better, you're going to have to sort of, regulate the criticism and be very careful about that. Just like with medicine or something, you don't give too much at a time. You don't think you're going to cure somebody overnight just by drowning them in medicine. Indeed, peevishness and querulousness are altogether alien to friendship and social life. But when goodwill bestows praise ungrudgingly and readily upon good actions, people endure also easily and without pain admonition and plain speaking, believing and continuing to love the person who took such pleasure in praising, as if now he only blamed out of necessity. So it is important to at least praise people as much as you blame them, and probably more, because that is what generates the goodwill and the trust and the conviction that when somebody does criticize me, I know they're not doing it from malice. They're not doing it because they want to see me fail, or they want to, compete with me or get something that I have. Rather, it's because they genuinely want what's good for me, and they genuinely think that there is a problem that needs to be corrected. Okay, so this is a very important caveat at the beginning, that it is characteristic of friendship to be truthful, even when that hurts. But it doesn't mean that we should expect true friends are going to be harsh, characteristically harsh, because whether we're looking at other people, that would not be a good measure of a true friend. Somebody who's being very kind to us, they might be a flatterer. We're going to have to look at how you distinguish that, but it could be that they're a true friend and they're just trying to make sure that when they do tell us a difficult truth, that they're packaging it in a way that is going to be palatable for us. So it's going to be more complicated. There's going to be we don't have a very simple way to tell a friend from a flatterer, because a friend has just as much reason to be pleasant to us as a flatterer. And as we're going to see, one of the things that a clever flatterer can do is to criticize us sometimes selectively in order to have the appearance of having this balance, like a friend does, of criticism and praise. So it's not just going to even be that simple of a friend is somebody who uses both praise and criticism, because a flatterer could also be mixing those things. So we're really going to have to get much more precise as what kind of praise and what kind of criticism will be characteristic of a friend versus a flatterer. So just to tie things up for now, he goes back to Plato, and he says, as Plato says, it is the height of injustice to appear to be just when you are not really so. Now we've seen, again, Machiavelli, and in the ancient world, those who were proto-Machiavellians, this is exactly what they consider to be wise and virtuous, is to pretend to be just when you're not. It's really important to see from a Socratic point of view, the response is not like, no, nobody would do that. Socrates understands, Plutarch understands. There are lots of people who would do that. That is an unfortunate fact of life, that people will pretend to be just when they're not. People will pretend to be friends when they're not. So we must deem the most dangerous kind of flattery, not the open, but the secret, not the playful, but the serious. So there are occasions when somebody is clearly, pushing us, and they're clearly trying to get something from us. They're manipulating us in such an obvious way. It might annoy us, it might tick us off, but he's saying, you know what, that's not really much of a threat. I mean, if you can see it a mile away, you'd have to be really slow not to be able to respond to that with your own interest in mind, right? But it's the clever flatterers, the people who are really good at imitating friendship, the people who are really good at throwing us off and not giving us the telltale signs of flattery, who are going to do the most damage to us in the long run. We're going to put our trust in them, and we're going to be more influenced by them. And it's, by the time we find out that it wasn't good advice, it wasn't good influence, and we may have been damaged quite a bit. For it throws suspicion upon a genuine friendship, which we may often confound with it if we are not careful. So this is a cruel reality too, is that it's not only a threat that we might think a flatterer is a friend, and we might trust a flatterer and be misled by the flatterer, but since we know that a friend might be a flatterer, we might actually turn away from somebody who actually is a friend and lose the benefits of that friendship. So both of these are things that he's going to be addressing in this essay. How do we avoid being used and abused by flatterers? But also, how do we know true friendship when we see it, so that we can actually take advantage of the benefits and the blessings of it in our lives? And so this, just a little overview of one of the lessons, one of the themes that Plutarch is looking at in his Practical Platonism. And we'll continue next time with the defense against flatterers.